When Alex Riley first stepped foot onto his grandfather's lakeside property after the funeral, he expected the silence. The house, set back from the tree-lined curve of Lake Windermere, had always been the kind of place that seemed untouched by noise or time. 7 acres of solitude, gifted not just as land, but as a kind of inheritance of peace, away from traffic, away from neighbors, away from the clatter of modern life. It was the place he remembered from childhood summers, fishing off the dock, skipping rocks, riding bikes down dusty paths. The house needed repairs, yes, but the soul of it was intact. What Alex didn't expect was that silence would soon become tension. Just beyond the tree line, the new development had grown fast. Dozens of identical homes under the iron-fisted rule of a homeowners association. The subdivision, Sunrise Shores, hugged the northeast edge of the lake. It was full of rules and officers and committee meetings. And one of those officers was a man named Ted Hoffman. Ted had never met Alex, but he didn't like what he SAW.it began with stares. Neighbors, armed with HOA newsletters and passive-aggressive smiles, watched Alex power wash the porch or install a new roof. He'd wave. They wouldn't wave back. Then came the notes, small ones, left under his windshield wiper when he parked near the trail entrance. This area is subject to HOA review. Or, private landscaping must conform to Sunrise standards. At first, Alex laughed them off. His property, as the deed clearly stated, sat entirely outside the HOA's jurisdiction. It was grandfathered in, quite literally. His home stood alone on private land, purchased before the subdivision had existed, but Ted didn't see it that way. Ted believed in control. His yard was edged like a military haircut. His role as HOA vice president had turned into a second career. And Alex's lakeside dock, in particular, got under his skin. It was clean, long, and beautiful. Unlike the HOA's shared dock, overcrowded and noisy, Alex's was quiet, peaceful, untouchable. Ted didn't like untouchable. One Monday morning, Alex walked out with a cup of coffee and found a fence, metal, ugly, bolted into the dirt right in front of the dock. A sign read, HOA member use only. He blinked, walked up. There were locks on it, chains. It looked official, but it wasn't. It couldn't be. Still, it stood between him and the water. He called the sheriff. The deputy came out, scratched his head, took a few photos, and said it was a civil matter. Alex held out the property deed. The deputy nodded. I believe you, he said, but unless there's a court order or criminal damage, we can't pull it down. Ted showed up 2 hours later in a golf cart. He smiled like a man who had just eaten someone else's lunch. We're just standardizing shoreline access, he said. The HOA has a right to protect the aesthetics of the lake. Alex was stunned. You're not my HOA. You have no legal access to this land. Ted didn't flinch. That's not what our surveyor says. The conversation ended there, but the fight didn't. Alex tried writing formal letters. He brought printed maps. He emailed the county clerk's office. He even asked for a meeting with the HOA board. They refused. The reply email said he lacked standing to request a hearing. Then came the harassment. Anonymous calls reporting animal neglect on Alex's land, calls that led to welfare checks, and a county animal control officer who apologized, saying he was just following up on reports. Garbage bins were knocked over. Trail signs near his driveway disappeared. The final straw came when Ted confronted Alex in person, unannounced, stepping onto the private porch and pointing a finger in his face. You think you're above the law because you inherited this place? You think you're smarter than everyone else? Alex replied calmly. I think you've lost track of what the law actually says. Ted snapped. The shove came fast. Alex stumbled, caught himself on the porch post, heart pounding. He raised his phone instinctively. It was already recording, something he'd started doing weeks ago on Ruben's advice. You're trespassing, Alex said. Ted looked at the phone. Good. Show the cops. Let them see what happens to guys like you when you stir up trouble. That clip, 39 seconds of unfiltered rage, would end up as Exhibit A. The legal path was slow, but Alex was done playing defense. He found a local attorney, Caroline Price, who had the sharpness of a blade and the patience of a surgeon. She pored over land records, drone footage, tax documents, and HOA bylaws. It took 2 months to prepare. During that time, the fence stayed up. So did the stress. But Caroline wasn't worried. They've buried themselves, she said. All you have to do is show the judge how deep. The courtroom was small, tucked into the county government building. Ted showed up in a tie that looked too tight. The HOA sent a lawyer who clearly hadn't reviewed the case. Caroline presented title history going back 45 years, complete with a boundary survey signed and sealed by the state. She played the audio. She played the video. She read the sign. She showed the chains. Ted tried to argue intent. The HOA attorney mumbled something about preserving neighborhood unity. Judge Latimer interrupted. This isn't about unity. This is about illegal seizure of private property. The gavel came down hard. Alex was awarded $350,000 in damages, part for property interference, part for emotional distress, and part for punitive violation of private rights. The judge ordered the fence removed within 48 hours. More importantly, she barred the HOA from engaging with Alex or his land again, explicitly stating that no future policies could extend to him or his property in any form. Ted walked out of that courtroom like a man who'd been stripped of armor. But the ripples weren't done. News of the case spread fast. Local newspapers, then a regional blog, then a viral post on social media titled, "This man just beat the HOA with a recording and a map." Hundreds of comments poured in. Dozens of residents from Sunrise Shores began showing up at HOA meetings demanding accountability. Ted was forced to resign. An emergency vote dissolved several rules entirely. Trust in the HOA collapsed like a house without a foundation. Back at the lake, the fence came down. A carved sign took its place, private dock. Trespassers will be fed to the fish. Alex didn't just reclaim his land. He reclaimed the quiet. And when he held a cookout the following Saturday, more people came than he expected. Neighbors. Strangers. Some brought stories. Others just brought beer. A few asked him what they should do about their own HOA problems. Alex smiled and said, "Start by recording everything." Alex didn't expect the phone calls, or the letters, or the strangers who parked just outside his gravel driveway to take a picture of the carved sign where the fence used to be. The dock was peaceful again, yes, but everything else was starting to buzz with a strange energy. Something had shifted. The fight, he thought, was his alone had become something more. It started with a handwritten note slipped into his mailbox from a woman named Julia, who lived 2 streets into the Sunrise Shores neighborhood. She wrote, "I'm not brave enough to fight them, but I'm grateful someone did. Your case made me realize I've been bullied by people who pretend they're protecting us." Then came a knock on the door. A man in his 50s, Mike, a contractor, said he'd been fined 3 times by the HOA for parking his work truck in front of his own house. "They told me I was lowering property values," he said. "I've lived here 15 years. Alex didn't have answers, but he listened. And then more people came. A woman with tears in her eyes. A father who wanted to know if it was legal for the HOA to deny him approval to build a wheelchair ramp for his daughter. They didn't want a lawyer yet. They wanted courage. That, Alex could offer. The local paper asked to run a follow-up. This time, they used a picture of him smiling with a neighbor on the dock. The headline read, "Man who beat HOA becomes unexpected community hero." Alex didn't feel like one. He still hated attention. Still avoided big stores, and didn't use social media except to post lake sunsets. But the exposure did something he hadn't expected. It emboldened others to act. By the end of that month, over 20 residents had filed formal grievances against the Sunrise Shores HOA board. And for the first time in years, the HOA had to hold a full open forum with community attendance. Ted wasn't there. He'd already moved 2 counties over, his name reduced to whispers and muttered curses. But the meeting boiled over. People demanded audits, demanded explanations. And when one elderly homeowner pulled out a copy of Alex's court ruling and waved it in the air like a torch, the room erupted in applause. Alex heard about all of it secondhand. He didn't go to that meeting. Instead, he was back on the dock with a fresh coat of sealant and a bottle of cold beer, enjoying the kind of silence that had first drawn him there. But part of him was listening. Not to the birds, or the waves, but to the pulse of something larger waking up. A few weeks later, he received a formal request from a local civic organization asking if he considered speaking at a town forum on property rights. His instinct was to say no. But something stopped him. He remembered what Caroline, his lawyer, had said after their court win. "People like Ted operate because people like you stay silent. You didn't. That matters." So he agreed. It was a small event at first, a few dozen chairs under a tent at the community center. He wore jeans, boots, and a shirt that still smelled faintly of wood stain. He didn't prepare a speech. He just told his story. He spoke about the first morning he saw that fence. About the frustration of being ignored. About the night he stood on his porch, fists clenched, trying to decide whether to walk away or stand his ground. He talked about fear, real fear, not of violence, but of being slowly crushed by a system designed to drain your energy until you give in. And then he told them what it felt like to win. Not the money. Not the court order. But the moment he stood in his backyard with the chains gone, the dock open again, and the silence reclaimed. People listened like they'd been starving. More invitations followed. Small towns. Legal panels. Property owner groups. Caroline joined him for a few and joked they were becoming a team. She called it the Backyard Rebellion Tour. He called it a weird detour I didn't see coming. But somewhere along that road, Alex began to see a bigger pattern. It wasn't just about HOAs. It was about small people being pushed by small powers with oversized egos. It was about fear wrapped in official stationery. About rules that serve control, not community. And most of all, it was about what happens when no one pushes back. The idea came during one of his walks along the lake trail. A platform. Not political, not commercial, just a place for people like him to share their stories, their evidence, their tactics. He called it unfence.us, a website where people could upload documents, find legal templates, and connect with sympathetic attorneys or journalists. He didn't build it himself. A college student from town volunteered after hearing Alex speak. In 2 months, they had over 3,000 visitors and hundreds of case submissions from across the country. People were no longer whispering. They were recording, reporting, resisting. Meanwhile, back at the lake, life returned to its steady rhythm. The dock was open. The fish were biting. The carved wooden sign still stood proudly where the fence had once been, now weathered by sun and laughter. Some visitors took selfies with it. Others left small notes carved into the back. "Thank you. Freedom lives here. No more fences." Alex didn't erase them. He had never wanted a movement. But now that it was here, he knew exactly what it stood for. Not chaos. Not rebellion. Just something simple. The right to be left alone. The right to enjoy your land, your home, your view, without fearing that some self-appointed authority would come knocking with a clipboard and a grudge. That summer, he hosted another cookout. This time, there were tents, live music, and neighbors who used to avoid eye contact now bringing dessert. Caroline made a toast. The same contractor who once feared parking in front of his own home now danced barefoot with his wife by the dock. When Alex looked out over the water that night, lanterns flickering and kids skipping rocks again, he realized something. He hadn't just fought to keep what was his. He had helped remind others that they could too. Alex Riley hadn't set out to make a statement. He wasn't a public speaker, a political crusader, or a man in search of an audience. But somewhere between the moment he tore down the unauthorized HOA fence that had been chained to the edge of his grandfather's dock, and the moment he watched neighbors gather around that very same spot to celebrate their own small wins, he understood something had changed. Not just for him. Not just for his 7-acre lakeside retreat. But for the town. Maybe even something bigger. The dock had become a place of unintentional symbolism. What once was just wood and nails stretching into calm waters had become a line in the sand for people tired of being silenced in their own neighborhoods. Alex never imagined he would represent that kind of courage. He still didn't see himself that way, but others did. People started showing up quietly at first. A retired couple who had sold their condo after a board tried to fine them for installing a handicap ramp. A father and daughter from out of town who brought cookies, and a framed photo of their yard before their HOA made them rip out their garden. A war veteran who just wanted to shake Alex's hand and say, "You reminded me how to fight without fists." These weren't the usual passersby. These were the bruised, the overregulated, the overlooked. People who had paid their dues only to be told their homes didn't quite fit the rulebook. Alex listened. He offered them lemonade, sometimes a chair, sometimes silence. And as the months passed, the story spread not just across the county, but across the country. A documentary filmmaker from Austin called a well-known podcast on small-town politics asked for an interview. National media outlets ran op-eds using Alex's story to anchor debates about property rights and the overreach of local authorities. It was surreal. Alex, who had once gone weeks without speaking to another human besides his dogs, now had emails flooding his inbox from people asking, "How do I fight back?" He was just one man. But he knew what helped him win: records, courage, a good lawyer, and the wisdom to press record at the right time. So, with the help of a few tech-savvy volunteers from town, he expanded unfence.us, turning it into a living archive of forms, video guides, templates, and even live Q&A events with attorneys like Caroline Price, who by now had become something of a local legend. The site included stories from people in all 50 states. Years. Ted's only been here 3. One woman in North Dakota uploaded footage of her HOA fining her for displaying an American flag on her garage. A man in Oregon had fought against a board that tried to restrict wheelchair access, claiming it disrupted the visual symmetry of the neighborhood. A family in Florida uploaded drone footage of an HOA tearing up their backyard vegetable patch while they were on vacation because it violated aesthetic cohesion. The stories weren't just sad. They were absurd. And increasingly, they were being challenged. Alex received word that 2 lawsuits, both citing his case as precedent, had been filed against abusive HOAs in other counties. He didn't know the plaintiffs, but they knew him. They mentioned him in court briefs. One case ended with the judge citing the Riley ruling as justification for damages and injunctive relief. His name had become part of the legal system. He didn't ask for it, but he carried it with a sense of quiet duty. Back at the lake, the world continued in slow motion, exactly how Alex liked it. The dock was in perfect shape now. He replaced old wood with fresh cedar planks, re-oiled the surface, and added solar-powered lanterns for nighttime ambience. Sometimes he'd just sit at the edge with a cup of coffee and watch the light dance on the water, remembering the quiet wisdom of his grandfather. Build something strong enough to outlive the noise. Noise had come. But now, only echoes remained. The local economy even began to shift. Inspired by the influx of visitors and attention, several small businesses near Sunrise Shores adopted the no-fence spirit. A bookstore opened a section dedicated to property law and personal sovereignty. A cafe started offering a Riley roast coffee blend with a logo of the carved dock sign. A real estate office began advertising homes with the tagline, "Zero HOA, freedom lies here." Civic culture, too, felt the shift. At a county forum, a new proposal was introduced to require all HOA charters to be recertified every 5 years by homeowner vote, and to include opt-out clauses for pre-existing properties like Alex's. The idea gained traction. Local government officials, who had once avoided speaking on HOA issues, now found themselves answering pointed questions from a more informed, more activated electorate. And then, something unexpected happened. Alex was nominated for a Community Leadership Award. It wasn't flashy, just a plaque from the Regional Civic Alliance. But it came with a ceremony, a crowd, and a request for a speech. He almost declined, but Caroline convinced him. "You don't have to be a politician," she said. "Just be you. That's all anyone wants." So he stood on a simple stage at the community center, wearing his best jeans and a clean flannel shirt, hands in his pockets, eyes honest. He didn't read from a paper. "I didn't start anything," he told the crowd. "I just stopped something." The applause was loud, but it wasn't the kind that fades. It was the kind that builds, because it belonged to everyone who'd ever felt small against a machine. Afterward, a child walked up with his parents and asked Alex if he was famous. "No," Alex smiled. "But I'm free. That's better." The family laughed. Then they took a photo beside the dock, beside the wooden sign that still read, "Private Dock. Trespassers will be fed to the fish." Over time, that sign became a pilgrimage spot. Couples came to propose in front of it. A wedding photographer once asked to stage a shoot there, calling it the symbol of boundary and belonging. Even a country music artist filmed part of a music video there, an acoustic ballad called "Not for Sale." Alex didn't profit off any of it. He didn't trademark his name or try to sell t-shirts. He just lived his life, grateful, grounded, and more connected than ever to the soil beneath his boots. But change had ripple effects. 3 years after the court case, a group of local homeowners filed a class action lawsuit against Sunrise Shores HOA leadership, citing years of selective enforcement, financial mismanagement, and retaliation. Internal emails leaked, some of them quoting Ted Hoffman long after his departure. One message read, "We should have crushed that lake guy before he went viral." That case led to a full audit, new elections, and the dissolution of more than half the HOA's standing policies. As the HOA shrank, something else grew: neighborliness. Without fear of fines or code threats, people began talking more, sharing tools, helping with renovations. Kids played in driveways again. American flags went up. So did flower beds, little libraries, solar lights, and handmade signs that read things like, "Be kind or be gone." Alex didn't take credit. But every time he passed someone on the trail who waved with gratitude in their eyes, he nodded, knowing that something good had been planted. In his own home, Alex carved a new bench, his biggest woodworking project since rebuilding the dock. On the back, he engraved something simple. The land remembers who stood for it. That bench now sits beneath the tallest tree on the property, facing the lake, shaded in the afternoon, quiet in the morning. Sometimes, visitors find it and sit for hours. A few have left notes tucked beneath the slats. One read, "You reminded me I don't have to say yes to bullies. Thank you." Another said, I'm fighting my HOA tomorrow. Your story gave me the courage. Another was written in a child's handwriting. When I grow up, I want to live on a dock like this. Alex kept every note, and through it all, he never changed who he was. A man who just wanted to keep what was his, and protect the spirit of a place passed down by blood, memory, and grit. He didn't want a legacy, but he got one anyway, not carved into history books, but into hearts, inboxes, court records, and lakeside benches across the country. Because sometimes, all it takes is one man to say, enough.